Blasen kann nichts machen. Kannst du das mal so drehen, dass wir nicht geblendet werden?
So?
Ja,
Was sagst du nicht?
Nee, vielen Dank.
Okay.
Ich bin ein bisschen partikular mit dem Wasser, was ich trinke.
Okay.
So.
Das ist gegönnt.
Dankeschön. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naran Shavanarochanam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Taturayam Tere Pramatam Svapata Krishna Punya Pavana Kirtana Hadyantastu Vyapadrani Viruti Sritsatam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloki Bhaktiya Bhavati Naishtiki. Bevor man aus dem Srimad Bhagavatam vorträgt, dass das wahre Mittel zum Sieg ist, sollte man allein der höchsten Persönlichkeit Gottes, Mutter Saraswati Devi, der Göttin der Gelehrsamkeit, und Srila Vyasadeva, dem Verfasser, seine achtungsvollen Ehrerbietung darbringen. Wenn man regelmäßig aus dem Srimad Bhagavatam hört und dem reinen Geweihten dient, wird alles, was für das Herz leidvoll ist, fast gänzlich vernichtet. Und der transzendentale, liebevolle Dienst für den glorreichen Herrn, der mit erlesenen Hymnen gepriesen wird zu einer unwiderruflichen Tatsache. Om Ajnanatimranasya Gananjana Shalakaya Rakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandiham Shri Guru Shri Yudapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vihamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakamatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostuti Tata Kanchana Gaurangi Radhi Vandavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haribe Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna. Soll ich lieber auf Deutsch oder auf Englisch sprechen? Man bräuchte auf jeden Fall eine Übersetzung, ne? You need to have a translation into German.
Sprechen alle in Englisch? Alle sprechen Deutsch, oder?
Wir sprechen, glaube ich, alle Englisch. Sollen wir lieber Englisch sprechen? Dara, wäre das okay, oder? Ich habe das meiste in Englisch vorbereitet. Ich habe ein bisschen was aus dem Wörterbuch auf Deutsch mir rausgesucht. Das muss ich dann übersetzen. Aber kann ich ja dann zusammenfassen. Okay. So, first of all, thank you very much for appearing in countless numbers here for this sacred occasion of listening from Srimad Bhagavatam and to learn from the example of Srila Prabhupada. I'm very glad that Rishi Kumar Prabhu was so kind to bestow upon me this mercy of service so that I can learn something, and I hope to be able to share that with you in this class. So please if you want, kindly bless me so that I may be able to speak something for the benefit of all of us that may inspire us in devotional life and release us from the fangs of material existence. Om Tat Sat. Okay, dann lese ich jetzt erst aus dem transzendentalen Tagebuch. Travels with His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada. October 1976 to November 1976 bei Harishauri Prabhu. Ich habe hier auch die beiden Bhagavatams. If you want, you can have the English Bhagavatam for the brauchen wir nicht. Okay, verstehe. Das stimmt, der 19. November ist das neue, oder? Habt ihr den schon gelesen? Srimad Bhagavatam 5532 states that the activities of Lord Rishabhadev were not approved by the general public, and so he adopted other means. When Lord Rishabhadev saw that the general populace was very antagonistic to his execution of mystic yoga, he accepted the behavior of a python in order to counteract their opposition. Thus he stayed in one place and lay down. While lying down, he ate and drank, and he passed stool and urine and rolled in it. Indeed, he smeared his whole body with his own stool and urine, so that opposing elements might not come and disturb him. Prabhupada opened his class by explaining... Sorry, das ist jetzt ein bisschen blöd hier mit dem Licht. Ajagara Vritti, the mood of the python. And he gave the other example in our line, Madhavendra Puri and Bilvamangala Thakur, who observed the same practice. They were doing that. In Vrindavan, Bilvamangala Thakur, he was blind. He was simply sitting in one place, and Krishna used to come and supply him milk. After stating how people in general do not know the real purpose of human life and have no interest in spiritual development, Prabhupada took the opportunity to say a few words about our current problems in America. He is full of confidence about his course of action, and he made it clear that there was no reason why we should not be. Therefore, our movement is being checked in the Western countries that this is a brainwash movement. Brainwash movement, that we are injecting some ideas by psychology, mental control, and our people, they are taking to it, and it is spreading like epidemic. How to check it? Therefore, they are now taking action how to stop this Hare Krishna movement in Europe and America. They are trying. Of course, we are not afraid of this attempt. They will never be successful, rest assured, because we are pushing Krishna consciousness. Krishna was attempted to be killed from the very beginning of his life. That is the nature of this material world. How to kill God. God is dead. This is their attempt. So from the life of Krishna, we can understand that so many attempts were made by the demons and the Rakshasas to kill Krishna. But actually, Krishna killed them all. So if you are sincere, if you follow the principles and push on this Krishna consciousness movement, nobody can kill you. You will go forward, rest assured. We are not going to be killed. That they are perceiving that this movement is spreading like epidemic. And the young men of Europe and America, they are taking seriously. Referring to the book Hare Krishnas and the counterculture, which Prabhupada has to carry wherever he goes, he said, Professor Stilson Judah already has given his conclusion that this movement is not going to stop. It will go on. That's a fact. Krishna cannot be killed. Neither his movement cannot be killed. Rather, those who are attempting to kill, they will be killed. But we must be very sincere, serious, follow the regulative principle and chant Hare Krishna mantra as you have been taught. Follow this principle boldly and there's no fear. So I will stop here. Would someone like to say something? point spring to your kind attention that you would like to mention? Okay, and then I will again summarize a little bit. So here, Lord Rishabhadev, he in this class from the 19th of November 1976 in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Rishabhadev, in order to counteract the antagonistic behavior of the general public of people, he stopped the execution of mystic yoga and he adopted the behavior of a python. Ajagara vritti, the mood of the python. And he was just lying down, sleeping, eating, passing stool, whatever, urine, all in the same position, just lying down. And we may think this is not a great tapasya, but actually if you happen to be sick for a long time and you lie down and the muscles, they become slack and everything starts to hurt, it's quite painful actually. I did not experience it myself so much, but I can observe that with old people, when they are lying down, let's say in old age homes or something, or in the hospitals when they have some problems, and the muscles, they deteriorate, they become less, then what is happening is they become so, the nerves become kind of exposed, so it's a very painful condition. And also to just wait until the food falls in your mouth practically, or comes in front of you, you know. What to speak of rolling in one's own stool and urine. Of course, it's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that Rishabhadev's fragrance of stool and urine was very fragrant and was actually enhancing, like a perfume, for miles around, you know, the whole area was giving such a pleasant smell. But he is the Lord himself, he's the Shakti Avesha avatar. And then we can see here, in opposition to that, that Srila Prabhupada, he is mentioning the antagonistic, materialistic criticism of the Hare Krishna movement, counterculture. He says that some people there are saying, oh, this is a dangerous movement, it's brainwashing the people and it's spreading like an epidemic. And Srila Prabhupada, he continues to say, we are bold, we don't fear, you know. As long as we are sincerely sticking to the process of Krishna consciousness, keeping us clean, pure, purity is the principle, then nobody can kill us. But these people, they will be killed actually. And that's a very nice connection point to today's class. And so I will stop here. Unless still somebody wants to say something. We can do something like that.
I can only compare these people, Python, living people, with the tenants who are living in the street, yes, at the Dom Square, and the whole street here, who has no place to live in, and they are sitting the whole day, eating, because the people are very kind, they give them much to eat, and they're eating, sleeping, and then it's very difficult to move for them, because they're sitting the whole day, eating, and how to say, that's a crime. Well, actually the same thing, we can see it, how it looks like. I'm sorry, maybe it's not exactly what, but I think, yeah, that is Shambhala's destination. That's what this life brings to this.
It's interesting that this association comes to your awareness, this kind of comparison. Then, and maybe externally to materialistic people, it may have looked like that. It is even said also that people used to spat on him and pass foul air in front of him, and sometimes even urinated at him, things like that, very disrespectful behavior. So that should be a good, or that can serve us as a good reminder that we need to be very cautious to perceive the devotional qualities of the people and not the external appearance. Because we have the tendency psychologically to judge others, right? We identify ourselves with this body, mind, whatever, falsely. And then also, in order to make sense of the world, we identify other people as particular, whatever, designations. So, yeah, we have to be very careful of that. Thank you. It's a nice point. Okay, so then we will first of all chant the third verse from the 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Would you like to open this board a little bit? Come on, open. Okay, something's happening. Try. Prabhu Tavirut Trinagul Magavare Katura Dangshai Mashakai Upaduta Kvachitu Gandhava Puram Patpashyati Kvachit Chashu Rayon Mukhagraham Prabhu Tavirut Trinagul Magavare Kathora Dangshai Mashakai Upadruta Kvachitu Gandhava Purang Papashyati Kvachit Chashu Rayon Mukhagraham Prabhu Tavirut Trinagul Magavare Katora Dangshai Mashakai Upadruta
Vachitu Gandhava Puram Prapashyati
Kvachitu Gandhava Puram Prapashyati
Kvachit Shashurayo Mukhagraham
Kvachit Chashuvayo Mukhagraham. Someone else? Prabhu Tavirut Trinagul Magavare Katvaranam Shai Mashakai Upadruta Kachitu Gandhava Puram Prapashyati Kvachit Chashu Rayo Mukhagraham Prabhuta, a very large number, Virut of creepers, Trina of varieties of grass, Gulma of thickets, Gahvare in bowers, Kathora cruel, Dangshai by bites, Mashaka by mosquitoes, Upadruta disturbed, Kvachit sometimes, two, but Gandhavapuram a false palace created by the Gandharvas, Prapashyati he sees, Kvachit and sometimes, Kvachit sometimes, Cha and Ashuraya very quickly.
very quickly.
Ulmuka,
Ulmuka,
like a meteor. Graham, a fiend. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this forest there are dense bowers composed of thickets, of bushes, grass and creepers. In these bowers the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in a forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost which appears like a meteor in the sky. Purport: the material household is actually a whole of fruitive activity. To earn a livelihood, one engages in different industries and trades, and sometimes one performs great sacrifices to go to higher planetary systems. Apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people and their behaviors compared to the biting of mosquitoes. This creates very undesirable conditions. Even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines that he is going to construct a grand house and live there permanently, although he knows that he cannot. Gold is compared to a quickly fleeting fiend, which appears like a meteor in the sky. It displays itself for a moment and is then gone. Generally, kamis are attracted to gold and money, but these are compared herein to ghosts and witches. So I will repeat again the verse. Pambutavirud trinakul mangamari kathora dangshai mashakai upadruta kachit ganda purang prabhashyati kachit ashurayom kagraham. In this forest there are dense bowers composed of thickets of bushes, grass and creepers. In these bowers the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost which appears like a meteor in the sky. So here, to set the context, we continue to hear from Jada Bharat, who is kindly continuing to his elaborations, his instructions to King Rahugana, and he is giving the figurative story of a merchant who goes into the forest to gain some goods, and he is describing the material world and the living entity who is entangled in a material conception of life. And so here in this particular verse we continue to hear some details of the difficult circumstances that the conditioned soul experiences in the material world. And even living in the temple we can sometimes experience those. Because here also are the three kleshas. Adhyatmika, Adidavika and Adidavika, and the Bhautika sufferings. So sufferings arising from their own mind and body, from other people, he is being described as mosquitoes. And sufferings of their own mind, for example, is here. The person is imagining, oh, there I can build a palace in the sky, I can build a grand house and live there, and have so many ideas. So these mental concoctions, they are also greatly troubling sometimes. Or some kind of wondrous thing appears in front of us, like a meteor, or like here Srila Prabhupada says, like gold, for example, is compared to gold, that is very fleeting, very temporary in its nature. And then it catches the attention and the living entity becomes bewildered, identifies that, yes, I want to have that, right? So this is sufferings of the own mind and body, because other living entities are also disturbing him. And of course there are also disturbances under divine orchestration, let's say earthquakes, or the heat of the sun in the summer, the cold in the winter, things like that. So, but it's remarkable that here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that even in these very undesirable conditions, in these disturbances, the conditioned soul imagines that he is going to live there happily. So, I don't know if you are all familiar with the story, or should I recap a little bit the introduction to this very beautiful chapter and the first 2 verses that we read last time, and Rupa Manohar Prabhu also was reading. Do you know the story of Jada Bharat? No? You're here the first time, right? I see you the first time. Are you from Köln?
Yeah, from Düren.
From Düren. Ah, nice. Yeah, there's a good community already growing. Very nice. So welcome. What is your good name?
Pascal.
Pascal. My name is Tulsi, Priya. Hare Krishna. Nice to meet you, Prabhu. So this story, there was one, we heard from Rishabhadev, no? Now, in the Transcendental Diary, and he had 100 sons. The eldest and foremost qualified son was Bharat Maharaj. He was a great king, and he was even so famous and doing such great deeds and such wonderful deeds that even among the demigods, who were the ministers, so to say, in God's government, who were ruling over particular planets, particular facilities, that this planet Earth, Bhumi Devi, she became known with the name Bharatvarsha. So from Bharat Maharaj, Bharatvarsha. Varsha means place, something like that. And so, because he was an Arya, he was adhering to the principles of the Vedic culture, of the high Vedic culture, mention of the Vedas, then he knew the value of this human form of life. Now, his father, Rishabhadev, had kindly instructed all of them, also the citizens in public assemblies, about that the human form of life is meant for self-realization and not for sense gratification, in essence. And so Jada Bharat, then, after he ruled the kingdom for so many thousand years, after having inherited it from his father, and then continued his lineage, passing his duties to his sons, and dividing the kingdom accordingly, and whatever. And so then he also renounced, and he went to the forest, and he became very, very successful in his cultivation of Krishna consciousness. And it is mentioned that he even reached the platform of Bhava. So there's different stages in devotional life. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but they are not exactly like steps. They are more like a rainbow, you know, one color is gradually merging with the other, so one quality is gradually prevailing, not exactly dominating, but becomes more prominent. So it starts with Shraddha, that means faith. Then Sadhu Sangha, when we have some faith in the devotees, we can trust the people, we have some relationship with them, then we open up, right? And then what happens when we open up? We cultivate a community, we cultivate relationships. So Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, but not with anyone, with sadhus, with holy people. And then Bhajana Kriya. So what happens by this beautiful association is that finally one comes to the stage that one wants to surrender his life to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And he engages one kindly in regulated devotional service, Bhajana Kriya. Then, during this process of Bhajana Kriya, one gradually becomes freed of unwanted, undesirable things, anatta nivritti. And so after that, after one is almost free, gradually one becomes steady. Of course, because before the many undesirable things that we have, let's say for example overeating or sleeping too much or whatever, you know, watching television in order to distract us from our sufferings, or drinking alcohol or whatever, that is a disturbance to the practice of regulated disciplines, whether yoga or sadhana. So after attaining the stage of steadiness, gradually we get more and more tastes. We feel more pulled we become more attracted by devotional service. We don't have to endeavor so hard, like in the military, like a soldier. Sadhana can be sometimes a little bit rigid, like the execution of military service or something, But then at this stage, when one attains steadiness, or when that becomes more and more prevalent, then the attraction starts, take over, We don't need to push anymore so much. We naturally feel compelled, to, what can I do next for Krishna? Oh, let me sing his name, or tell someone who's coming, give some Mahaprasadam, and kind of this spontaneity is coming. We like to be engaged in devotional service. And then after steadiness, after attaining the taste, then bhava comes. Bhava is the stage that Maharaj Bharata attained. So that stage is just one stage before attaining love, pure love to Krishna, Krishna Prema. So he was on that high platform. He renounced his beautiful family, opulent kingdom, and well-established kingdom, and good fame and everything, for the sake of realizing his relationship with God. He went to the forest, underwent severe austerities and everything, and due to these practices he attained a very high level of self-realization. He was almost liberated, very high level. But then, for different reasons, he fell down from his path when he neglected his spiritual duties, his sadhana, his disciplines, by becoming overly affectionate to a small deer. There was on one day he was sitting and meditating, everything next to the river, and there was some tiger or lion was like wow, making big sound, and there was one mother deer, and she was so shocked, kind of. She spontaneously almost jumped across the river, but she fell into the river and died there. But even while she was just, sprinting and jumping into the river, she gave birth to her baby calf that fell out of her womb. So then Jadabharat, he could understand that, Maharaj Bharata, he could understand that this calf is now motherless and is without any protection. So, of course, we have the duty to help anyone, and he is the king. And in Vedic times, the king sees everyone born in the same kingdom as his subordinate, as his responsibility. So it's natural that he took care of the calf. But somehow or other, he became too much affectionate, cute, small, dear calf. And then he was constantly, instead of meditating about Krishna, he was constantly meditating about that animal. And in the next life, he had to accept the body of a deer. But by the mercy of Shri Krishna, he could remain conscious about that, his previous lifetime and his spiritual practices and everything. And then, after he died in the body of a deer, he attained again, by the mercy of the Lord, the body of a brahmana in a very high elevated family. But because he already learned his lessons, better not to, feel too much affection for his family members and everything, he disguised himself like a deaf and dumb person, like an idiot, basically, dirty idiot. So basically, a little bit he followed this example of Rishabhadev, you could say, was an Avaduta. So when his father, who was a brahmana, wanted to teach him that before you chant your Gayatri, you have to clean yourself, and and also after you go to the toilet, you clean yourself. So he mixed everything up, he did it exactly opposite way, and he projected himself as being unable to, socialize and to learn these things and everything, to have his peace. Like Maharaj Rishabhadev, he rolled himself in stool and urine just to keep these unfavorable elements far distant, So, and that worked for some time. And then suddenly, when his father had passed away, he had some stepbrothers. They were not treating him very nicely, of course, because they were more concerned about the external appearances and karmakanda and things like that. So what happened is that one day there was a king passing by when he was standing in the field to protect the crops, and the king, they needed one carrier for the palanquin because apparently something happened to the fourth one, and then they just simply adopted him. They thought, oh, he's very strong, stout and strong, because he had a very strongly built and healthy body and everything, and he can carry the palanquin. So he carried the palanquin, but his steps were very uneven because he avoided to step on the ants. He was very cautious with his steps. And then, of course, the palanquin was carried very unevenly, and the king became disturbed. It was a very unfavorable condition for the king. So then he wanted to chastise Jadabharat, and he said that he told him some words, and he said that, you know, I will punish you because repeatedly you did not carry out my orders. And then, out of his kindness, Jadabharat, who appears like a dumb and deaf person, but who's actually a self-realized sage, a very highly elevated soul, he kindly speaks to the king, you know. And he tells him, yeah, you know, now you're in the body of a king, but you're a fool actually, you know. You don't know that this life is temporary. And then he told him a little bit about his own story and everything. So then the king, he could immediately understand, oh, this is a great Vaishnava, and I made a big offense. And he threw himself at his lotus feet to ask for his forgiveness. And after he did that, he became submissive, and he wanted to hear more instructions. But even on the first go, he could not understand everything. So then he insisted, oh, please, can you kindly elaborate more on that? And this is where the story is now connecting. So the forest of the material enjoyment, basically. Okay, so that's in brief the story. And so there's a lot to say to that. And from this particular verse today, what sprang to my attention is that that is actually from a verse previous to that one that Rupa Manohar Prabhu was giving. Maybe I read that. O King Rahugana, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. So these plunderers are the senses, the 6 senses. So the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses and the mind, the inner sense. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money. And money is also his energy, his life energy. And it is taken away by these plunderers, by the senses. Like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest that are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector, the wife and children enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. So not only the 6 senses are plundering him, but other living entities too are taking advantage of this poor merchant. But because he thinks they're very dear to him, they enter their heart, so then it's been described here like a lamb that is taken away from the custody of its protector by a ferocious animal. This is also what happens to us in the material conditional stage of life. The senses, or also the wife or children, they demand, I am your dear whatever, and please give me this. This is now needed, right? So they call for our attention. Give me this. Like, I see something beautiful, I want to enjoy that. Or I want to smell something nice, or whatever, eat something. So instead of spending money for advancing in Krishna consciousness movement, one then spends his hard-earned money on sinful activities and becomes implicated in the process of transmigration. So this is what happens to the conditioned soul. So material household is actually a whole of fruitive activities. One may perform so many pious rituals with the view or with the motivation to attain heavenly planets. One might try to cultivate mundane religiosity. But like we heard yesterday, this is a very temporary and unstable situation. Even on Lord Brahma, he has to die. And we also have to die. And also, another point is that I already mentioned that, but that the behavior of envious people, like the mosquitoes that are sucking one's blood, creates very undesirable conditions. But even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines, although he knows that he cannot, he imagines to build a house, a palace in the forest, or a palace in the sky. So that means the element of mental concoction comes in. Is everybody still with me? So the mental concoction, the mind tells, oh, maybe with this idea we can be happy. Right? That is mental concoction. And so now today I want to speak more about mental concoction, and there's another point that I want to speak in this relationship, is also that we are being misguided. Well, who is misguiding us constantly? Srila Prabhupada here mentioned the materialistic society and material scientists very often, if you read his books. But actually, we are mostly being misguided by our false ego. And there's one nice song from, which is glorifying Lord Nityananda. That means that having been made mad by the false ego, one considers the non-temporary to be eternal, and that means matter to be the real goal of one's life, and the non-temporary, the eternal, one considers to be useless, because one forgot the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, the spiritual master, or Krishna, you can say, because who is Lord Nityananda? He is Adi Guru. The Guru is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now we want to speak about this, and there's something very nice I found. Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja offering for his spiritual master, which is very famous, and he can actually show us the proper understanding that apparently is missing here in Maharaj Rahugana still. Not knowing the aim of human life, one is constantly being misguided. So we want to get rid of the illusion of avidya, of ignorance. And because otherwise, if we don't want to become rid of that, we become implicated in the repetition of birth and death. And being thus absorbed and continually in a distressed condition, one can never attain to real happiness, real inner satisfaction. There may be some temporary happiness of the senses, but that is basically just like a drop of water on a hot stone in the desert. We try to become happy by it, and it's creating more hankering for the object of the senses, but it's not really fulfilling the need, right? It's not fulfilling the taste for it. And Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that this is like trying to extinguish a fire by pouring oil into it. Right? So lust is very counterproductive. So the path of material world is very difficult to traverse. And that is because the conditioned living soul only sees the three fruits of his activities, auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He's just concerned about enjoying the fruits. And he forgets that by acting in particular ways, cultivating particular desires and perceptions, he's creating karma. And he will be forced to immediately accept a certain type of body he earned, and his protesting will not help, and that is the stringent law of the material nature. So even though the conditioned living entity, the merchant in the forest, tries to experience happiness, he actually never gets to experience it. Like here in today's verse we hear that there's thick bushes and thorns and creepers, and they stop his progression in life. I don't know if you ever had that experience to try to go through thick thorns and bushes. I was recently visiting my mother, and there was one particular area where I played a lot as a small child, and I brought some stones with particular minerals on it and everything, and I wanted to return there and pick up some more of these minerals. So I went there with my mother by bike, and I tried to climb that mountain, but in the meantime they put some fences there, and there were so many thickets and bushes and Brennnesseln and Brombeeren and mosquitoes, and I simply could not get through. There was no hole, because it was not used for a long time. So if you try to go through this kind of environment, it becomes very painful and very disturbing, especially the mosquitoes that attacking you, they're not waiting, oh, finally some food has come my way, let us drink the blood. And it's not very nice. So I decided, okay, it's pointless, and I returned without actually achieving my goal. So this is how material world can us never really make happy, and we have to work very hard. We are, normally in material life, in conditional state of life, we endeavor very hard to acquire some money, to get some sort of sense gratification, but then together with the sense gratification there is so much suffering also, and everything is temporary. So we are basically being entangled in different types of ideas for trying to get happy in material life. Or one can say we are entangled in different types of mental concoction, because the mind is creating some concoctions. And so in this way, the jiva, the conditioned soul, comes fully under the control of material intelligence. Because when we have this particular concoction that, let's say, I need to be a millionaire, then what happens is my senses are crying for fulfillment. They want sense gratification, right? So they will force me to become active in that way. And then we forget, actually, that we are not the body, that we are the soul, and we lose track of who we are and where we are and how to get out of it. And Srila Prabhupada, he said very nice things. He said that, like a fish in the water, the fish will not be happy with any amount of sense gratification. You can give him a nice fish wife and nice comfortable seat and serve him whatever he likes to eat. But the fish will nonetheless never be satisfied, because it's just not his element out of the water. And he will only realize the satisfaction when he gets back into the water, which is his natural environment. So similarly with us, we only realize what we missed when we try it, when we, open the honey, the glass of honey, and we stick the finger inside, or the spoon, and we take a good sip or something, then we can have a taste, not theoretically. So this is the same with the process of devotional service. It is just not possible to understand it theoretically, like the fish, fish out of water. You can give him all literature, and and he may read, oh yes, I need to be in the water, but if he does not have any experience of what it means being in the water, he does not know what is his real happiness. And that is the origin of trying to become happy through sense gratification, because the soul is Ananda, Satchit Ananda. So in this connection, what is hampering our process is ignorance. So if we don't have the knowledge who I really am and how I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities, then I'm trapped, right? I'm lost. Do you have some questions so far, or should I stop here? Look like it's a little bit tiring for you, so if you're not really interested, then we can stop also, and we can save the valuable time for other activities. Yes?
sometimes we, I mean, at least for myself, I can say I'm trying to endeavor to do many things that are prescribed and that are recommended by Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada and things, but still the material stresses are affecting me a lot. And I was just wondering how much time will it take, or what do I exactly need to do until I reach a stage where I can actually be more detached from these material stresses. Because sometimes I could be detached from them, but a lot of the times I would be very involved in them as well. So, yeah.
It doesn't take time to solve the problem. It takes sincerity. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he makes the point that we need to be sincere. Yesterday we read a very nice quote in this calendar. Srila Prabhupada said that we cannot be negligent. So if we are only half-heartedly endeavoring, then we don't get the results. We need to be fully invested. That's the price. And there's no shortcut. And as soon as we surrender, then we can get the taste, And that nectar is pulling us, and then it's not just pushing. We can attain the mercy.
So what do you actually mean by surrender then?
What do you understand? Another term of surrendering.
Devoting yourself fully or something?
But practical. I'm not speaking from the point of philosophy, but how does it apply in your life? How do you do it practically?
Well, you tolerate things that you don't like and you do things that you don't want to do. Right?
Okay, so basically you're adhering to duties. You understand by using your intelligence that it's actually better for you in the long run, that you have to undergo some austerities and do what you're supposed to do, and then you can get happiness, right? So by the use of higher intelligence, you can discriminate. And that's the use of our intelligence. But intelligence alone is not enough. It needs to be spiritualized intelligence. Buddhi yoga, like Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita. Because the soul stands on top of everything else. First of all, there's matter. Then the senses, who are trying to enjoy the objects of the senses. Then the mind, which is like a vessel for the different senses. And above the mind comes intelligence. And above the intelligence comes the soul proper. So this is the proper sequence, so to say, that the soul stays on top. That means in our practical life, how does it play out? So when Lord Krishna, he says in Bhagavad Gita that focus your mind on me, offer you my respectful obeisances and serve me and pray to me, whatever, chant my holy name, right? So when we do that, and it really starts with the mind, therefore this mental concoction is a very important point here in the class, that then when we do that, the soul engages the intelligence, because we know the instructions of Bhagavad Gita ideally and Srimad Bhagavatam, and we hear from the devotees and sadhus what is proper behavior and what should be the proper attitude, proper motivation, all of these important details. So then, with that equipped, we have a weapon. The intelligence, spiritual intelligence, is being compared to a sword, or sometimes also like a razor. But in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is explaining that this is like a sword of knowledge, and we are supposed to cut the topsy-turvy banyan tree of the material existence with that sword. We need to cut off our connection with that. And that basically refers to our knot in the heart. That means the deep-rooted desire to enjoy independently, to be separated from Krishna. We want Krishna's kingdom without God, basically. Right? We want to be in paradise, but we don't want to. We want to be primary enjoyers, not secondary enjoyers. We don't want to be servants, because maybe from the material platform we have the experience that being a servant is not a very prestigious position, not very comfortable. But in a spiritual sense, that is completely different. By being here in a conditioned world since so many millions of lifetimes maybe, we have these strong impressions that collected and that are like obstacles, right? So therefore we need trust, we need relationships with the devotees. Then sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, the spiritual master comes, like you also initiated. And then he tells you, okay, this is what you should do, right? Because you have trust and you know that he is an authorized person, then you can accept his guidance. And then, gradually, anartha nivrittis, all these impurities, they are being cleansed out, sorted out, And maybe gradually, but it's a process. For some people it takes longer, for some people it takes less long. But it depends upon one's sincerity of seeking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, and not seeking shelter in sense objects, or the mind's concoctions, or material intelligence. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you have further questions? No comments? So would you like to hear more a little bit about this mental concoction and the false ego that is basically obstructing us?
Sure.
But that is now in German, so it's quite a lot, but I can paraphrase maybe. So I was looking an online dictionary, Cambridge online dictionary, about prestige. Okay, now I switch to German language. Das wird hier bezeichnet als hohes Ansehen in der Öffentlichkeit. So it's a reputation or influence due to success or rank or things like that. And in Wikipedia, which is not such a good reference to mention publicly in scholarly papers, but here it serves a very good purpose, we find, Prestige bezeichnet den Ruf einer Person, einer Gruppe von Personen, einer Institution oder auch einer Sache, eines Gegenstandes, eines Ortes, bla bla bla. Umgangssprachlich wird Prestige mit gleichgesetzt mit einem sehr guten Ruf, hoher Reputation, ein sehr gutes Image haben. Das Wort ist eine Übernahme des französischen Wortes Prestige, Ansehen bzw. Geltung, und rührt aus dem Lateinischen her, Prestigium, Vorzeichen, sowie Prestigiae mit der Bedeutung Gaukelei oder Blendwerk. Ist das nicht interessant? False prestige, ne? Lord Chaitanya, he speaks of false prestige, that we need to avoid that. And here in this small passage already, we find very nice hints, that prestige comes, for example, due to good reputation or status symbols or having a particular position or maybe seniority or things like that, right? But these are external considerations. And here in the Latin, it means even something like I don't know how you call gaukelei in English, but it's almost something like a lie, to seem to be different, to be more concerned with the appearance. So it's exactly the opposite that Maharaj Rishabhadev was doing in Jadabharat. They were not concerned about their prestige, they were rolling in urine and cold to be left in peace by the opposing elements. Und dann habe ich noch nachgeguckt, Demut. Ich habe hier noch mehr, aber über die Zeit, so wie kurz ist, gehe ich jetzt einfach auf Demut ein. Der Ausdruck Demut kommt von Althochdeutsch Diumuti, dienstwillig, also eigentlich Gesundung eines Dienenden haben. Die Bestandteile des Wortes lassen sich weiter herunterbrechen in die Wörter dienen, Dionön, und Mut. Mut. Im christlichen Kontext bezeichnet Demut die Haltung der Geschöpfe zum Schöpfer, analog dem Verhältnis von Knecht zum Herrn. Allgemeiner die Tugend, die aus dem Bewusstsein unendlichen Zurückbleibens hinter der erstrebten Vollkommenheit, also Gott oder das göttliche, sittliche Ideal, erhabenes Vorbild hervorgehen kann. So now we come to humility. And humility, here we hear the root of the word comes basically from being service-minded. And it also requires some courage. So, dann gibt es hier sehr interessant, zu unterscheiden ist die Demut als innere Haltung und der äußere Ausdruck von Demut, die demütige äußere Erscheinung. Im Idealfall stimmen beide überein. wer sich demütig gibt, muss deshalb jedoch noch nicht demütig sein. Und umgekehrt kann derjenige, der hochmütig erscheint, einen echten Stolz und eine damit verbundene innere Demut haben. Wer seine vorgebliche Demut zur Schau stellt, ist stolz, nicht demütig. Die Demut besteht dann nur zum Schein. Die unechte Demut ist entweder eine solche Demut nur zum Schein oder in einem anderen Sinn. Die falsche Demut, Selbsterniedrigung, sklavischer Sinn. Was man als falsche Demut ansieht, hängt von der Weltanschauung ab. Zu unterscheiden ist auch zwischen Demut und Demütigung als öffentliche Erniedrigung oder Beschämung, die der Starke dem Schwachen zufügt. Der im besten Sinne Demütige kann sich vom Mangel an Demut, dem Hochmut, gedemütigt finden. Ebenso jedoch kann solche Demütigung als Waffe gegen den Hochmut gewendet werden. Jetzt werde ich euch noch ein bisschen was hier vorlesen aus der Rubrik von Wikipedia: Demut als Tugend und als Fehlhaltung in Religion und Philosophie. Ich spreche jetzt mal nicht so viel von dem Christlichen, aber es gibt hier 2 Leute, die haben gute Sachen gesagt. Im Grunde genommen, Gott demütigt Menschen, um sie zu ihm zurückzubringen. Deswegen wird das auch gesagt, dass das die größte Segnung ist vom spirituellen Meister, wenn der einen zurechtrückt, ne? Wenn der eine intensive Anweisung gibt. Wenn der mal das falsche Ego sagt, so wie der König, wie der Bhagavatam von dem König, den König hier zurechtgewiesen hat: Du bist ein Dummkopf, du sprichst mit erhabenen Worten, aber was du sagst, das ist eine Versammlung von Weisen, würdest du als Dummkopf durchgehen. Und so etwas Ähnliches haben wir auch in der Bhagavad-Gita von Arjuna, wie Krishna zu Arjuna spricht. Der britische Rabbi Jonathan Sachs sieht daher Demut als eine Wertschätzung seiner selbst, seiner Talente, Fähigkeiten und Tugenden, aber ebenso auch eine Wertschätzung anderer sowie eine Offenheit gegenüber der Welt. Die falsche Demut wird auch angedeutet. Zur Abgrenzung von Fehlvorstellungen heißt es bei Francisco de Osuna: Manche Menschen verstehen unter Demut eine Enge des Herzens und die platte und kleinmütige Veranlagung eines Menschen, den nur Unwesentliches interessiert. Andere denken, Demut sei kränkliches Aussehen und Niedrigkeit, die sich in Haltung, Kleidung und Benehmen manifestiert. Manche verwechseln die Demut mit Feigheit und Furcht, von denen einige beherrscht sind, sodass sie sich nicht an große Dinge wagen. Schließlich meinen einige, es sei demütig, über keine Fähigkeiten zu verfügen oder die vorhandenen nicht zu nutzen, sondern zu verbergen. All diese Auffassungen sind falsch und haben nichts mit wirklicher Demut zu tun. Pater Damian Meyer erklärte Demut wie folgt. Also er hat in seinem Tagebuch notiert, wie sich die Haltung der Demut im Leben auswirkt, also praktisch. Er spricht von 3 Stufen der Demut. Ihre erste Stufe ist die Bescheidenheit, welche sagt, andere sind auch noch da und sind vielleicht besser als ich. Wozu noch der Geschmack kommt, der es dumm findet, sich vorne hinzustellen. Der Bescheidene schätzt andere hoch, ist aber auch von seinem eigenen Wert überzeugt. Er hat es nicht nötig, sich auf Kosten anderer vorzudrängen und zu profilieren. Er versucht auch die Fähigkeiten seiner Mitmenschen zu sehen und zu fördern. In diesem Zusammenhang ist es die Demut, die Abwesenheit von übertriebenen Ansprüchen an andere und die Aufmerksamkeit für sie. Die zweite Stufe ist das Stehen in der Wahrheit, über welche die eigene Person sich selbst vergisst. Hier zeigt der Demütige sein wahres Gesicht. Er unterstellt sich der wirklichen Lage der Dinge und den Erfordernissen der Situation. Er kann von sich, seinen Stimmungen und Interessen absehen und so seine Mitmenschen und ihre Bedürfnisse verstehen. Im Englischen kommt das sehr schön zum Ausdruck in dem Wort understand. Die dritte Stufe der Demut ist nach Guardini die Liebe, die jene heilige Bewegung mit vollzieht, in welcher der große Gott sich ins Kleine hinabgeworfen hat. So I will just paraphrase now in English. about humility. So there's different types of humility. There can be an external humility that is apparent only, like if we, try to look humble, or maybe we have shady clothes or something, and we don't have a prestigious position. In the society, and so real humility, according to these scholars here, is an awareness about one's own talents and potentials, but that is based in reality, and also about the appreciation about those qualities in others, and considering that, oh, maybe the other person is more qualified than me, so I should not push myself in front. I like that very much. And then another scholar is describing there's like different steps or stages of humility. And that is how humility displays itself, comes out in our personal life. And he said that the first level is, was heißt Bescheidenheit in Englisch, weiß das jemand? Simplicity vielleicht? Einfachheit? If you don't take more than you need, that means Bescheidenheit. So the simple person is also regarding others high, but he also has a healthy understanding of his own value. So therefore he does not need to push himself in front and to be public profile, so to say. And the second stage is to be rooted in knowledge, jnanavan, to stand in the knowledge and truth about his own person and about the situation, about other people. And so this we can see also in our tradition, in Vaishnava tradition, that when we understand ourselves to be the spiritual soul and not the body, that is the real understanding of what is actually reality and what is irreal, then naturally we feel humble, right? Because Krishna is so qualified, and the devotees, they are also so qualified, they have so beautiful characteristics and behavior and attitudes and everything, right? So that's naturally humbling for a decent soul. And it is also the key to spiritual life, actually. And the third stage, according to Gauradesh, is to develop that love. So it's really more and more a refining of the mood, so to say, and proper vision. So if you want, we can stop here, or I can read the real nectar, where we can see how Srila Prabhupada, in his Vyasapuja offering to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, demonstrates how he perceives the real truth and understanding, this sense of humility, of understanding, that, okay, I understand that I stand under the other person and I give room for this person's expression. And in this way, when we act like that, we can actually attain the mercy of Sri Guru and Sri Krishna, if we act that way. So that depends on you, but I think people are leaving, maybe it's already a little too long. But it's very nice. You can find that also in Vanipedia, Vyasapuja Homage to Bhaktisiddhanta.
If you want, you can read it to me and everyone else can go.
Okay, let's do like that. Do you have more questions or comments so far? Or? Became a little bit lengthy. I intended to be finished by 9 o'clock, so I apologize and again speaking.
I would like to hear it if you want.
Okay, so this is very nice. It's actually very nice nectar. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, this is from the homage 1936 to his Guru Maharaj. So first of all, he gives 8 stanzas of prose, which is in the Victorian English, the Old English, so maybe it's a little hard to understand, but then he gives his Bhaktivedanta purport, and that's real nectar. So should I read also the prose, or just go to the Okay, that's it. Adore, adore ye all, the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May. When he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, His Divine Grace. Oh, my Master, the evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle. Struggle for existence, a human race, the only hope, His Divine Grace. Misled we are, all going astray. Save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wonder thy ways to turn our face, adore thy feet, your divine grace. Forgotten Krishna, we fallen souls, paying most heavy the illusion's toll. Darkness around, all untraced. The only hope is divine grace. Message of service thou hast brought, a healthy life, as Chaitanya wrote. Unknown to all, it's full of praise. That's your gift, your divine grace. Absolute ascension, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. This gives us a life anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right, you have the mace. Save me a fallen, your divine grace. The line of service as drawn by you is pleasing and healthy, like morning dew. The oldest of all, but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. Okay. Sakshantarit vinasamasta shastra yuktastata bhavyata eva sadvi kintu prapoya priya vatasya vandi gurashri charanarvindam. In the revealed scriptures it is declared that the spiritual master should be worshipped like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this injunction is obeyed by pure devotees of the Lord. The spiritual master is the most confidential servant of the Lord. Thus let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of our spiritual master. I think I skipped a little bit. 62 years ago, on this auspicious day, the Acharya Dev made his appearance by the call of Thakur Bhakti Vinod at Sri Kshetra Jagannath Puridham. Gentlemen, the offering of such an homage has been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev. Is not a sectarian concern, for when we speak of the fundamental principle of Gurudev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my Guru from yours or anyone else's. There is only one Guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me and all others. In the Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12 it is said, Tadvigyanatam saurum neva vigatsit samit panishotriyam brahmanishtam. In order to learn the transcendental science, one must approach the bona fide spiritual master in a cyclic succession, who is fixed in absolute truth. Anyway, then Srila Prabhupada is describing a little bit about the Parampara. One who interprets the divine sound or Shabda Brahma by his imperfect sense perception cannot be a real spiritual guru, because in the absence of proper disciplinary training under the bona fide Acharya, the interpreter is sure to differ from Srila Vyasadeva, as the Mayavadis do. Srila Vyasadeva is the prime authority of the Vedic relation, and therefore such an irrelevant interpreter cannot be accepted as the guru or Acharya. Howsoever equipped he may be with all acquirements of material knowledge. As it is stated in Padma Purana, Sampradaya Vihina ye mantraste nishparamataha. Unless you are initiated by a bona fide spiritual master in the disciplic succession, the mantra that you might have received is without any effect. So Srila Prabhupada here a little further says that this knowledge, basically of Krishna, spiritual knowledge, is permanently sealed to the cognitive approach of the empiricists. As it is said in the Svetashvatara Upanishad 6.23, Yasya devi piraha bhakti yatha devi tatha budau, tasyayate katita yakta pakashanti mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who are simultaneously have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us to have even the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vyasadeva or his bona fide representative. Every moment we are being deceived by the knowledge of our direct perception. It is all the creation or concoction of the mind, which is always deceiving, changing and flickering. We cannot know anything of the transcendental region by our limited, perverted method of observation and experiment. But all of us can lend our eager ears for the oral reception of the transcendental sound transmitted from that region to this, through the unadulterated medium of Sri Gurudev or Sri Vyasadeva. Therefore, gentlemen, we should surrender ourselves today at the feet of the representative of Sri Vyasadeva for the elimination of all our differences, bred by our unsubmissive attitude. So to receive transcendental knowledge, we must completely surrender ourselves to the real Acharya in a spirit of ardent inquiry and service. So one really has to do it, being really there, really want to know. Actual performance of service to the Absolute under the guidance of the Acharya is the only vehicle, by which we can assimilate transcendental knowledge. It has to be assimilated. So today's meeting for offering our humble services and homage to the feet of the Acharya Dev will enable us to be favored with the capacity of assimilating the transcendental knowledge so kindly transmitted by him to all persons without distinction. So that is basically referring to, we need to acquire the mercy of the Guru, to understand Krishna. The Guru is giving us Krishna and Krishna is giving us the Guru. Okay, so he speaks then about material and spiritual happiness and how this material culture has not attained the ultimate goal of life. And he's quoting another verse from the Katha Upanishad 1.3.14. Uttishtata jagarata prapyavaran nibhutata surasya dhara nishita duratyaya dugam patastat kavayo vadanti. Please wake up and try to understand the boon that you have in this human form of life. The path of spiritual realization is very difficult. It is sharp, like a razor's edge. So that is again, we need to avoid negligence, to really focus, to have like a burning flame of devotional service. We really need to dedicate ourselves. And then he says, we must admit that we have realized definitively that the divine message from his holy lips is the congenial thing for suffering humanity. All of us should hear him patiently. If we listen to the transcendental sound without unnecessary opposition, he will surely have mercy upon us. The Acharya's message is to take us back to our original home, back to God. Let me repeat, therefore, that we should hear him patiently, follow him in the measure of our conviction, and bow down at his lotus feet for releasing us from our present causeless unwillingness for serving the Absolute and all souls. And then he says, in this material society, we have scarcely tried to give any food to the soul, which is distinct from the body and mind. Therefore, we all are committing suicide in the proper sense of the term. The message of the Acharya Dev is to give us a warning to halt such wrong activities. Let us therefore bow down at the lotus feet for unalloyed mercy and kindness he has bestowed upon us. Gentlemen, do not for one moment think that my Gurudev wants to put a complete brake on the modern civilization, an impossible feat. But let us learn from him the art of making the best use of a bad bargain, and let us understand the importance of this human life, which is fit for the highest development of true consciousness. The best use of this, our human life, should not be neglected. And then he recites one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Lavasadu labhamedam bahusam bhavante manushyanam atadam anityam api hadira tunamyateta napateta numrityuyan nishayasaya visaya kalusagatasya. This human form of life is obtained after many, many births, and although it is not permanent, it can offer the highest benefits. Therefore, a sober and intelligent man should immediately try to fulfill his mission and attain the highest profit in life before another death occurs. He should avoid sense gratification, which is available in all circumstances. Let us not misuse this human form of life in the vain pursuit of material enjoyment, or in other words, for the sake of only eating, sleeping, fearing, and sensuous activities. So here Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing the point of urgency. We need to have this feeling of urgency. I need to be active now. And really, like, if something is urgent and important, then this is your first concern. You do that first, even in management, you know. Gentlemen, it has been the mania of the cultured, in brackets, or uncultured society of the present day to accredit the personality of Godhead with merely impersonal features, and to stultify him by claiming that he has not senses, no form, no activity, no head, no legs, and no enjoyment. This has been this enjoyment, the pleasure of the modern scholars, due to their sheer lack of proper guidance and true introspection in the spiritual realm. All these empiricists think alike. All enjoyable things should be monopolized by the human society, that means exploit the resources of material nature, or by a particular class only, and the impersonal God would be a mere order supplier for whimsical feats. We are happy that we have been relieved of this horrible type of malady by the mercy of His divine grace. He is our eye-opener, our eternal Father, our eternal preceptor, and our eternal guide. Let us therefore bow down at His lotus feet on this auspicious day. Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still, my Gurudev has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invincible darkness of empirical knowledge. Okay, then towards the end, he says, personally, I have no hope for any direct service of the coming crores of births in the sojourn of my life. But I am confident that someday or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am at present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me, with all my earnestness, pray at the lotus feet of my Divine Master to allow me to suffer the lot for which I am destined, due to my past misdoings, but to let me have this power of recollection that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the Almighty, Absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my Divine Master. Let me therefore bow down at His lotus feet with all humility at my command. So that was not complete because it was a little long already, but I skipped some passages, hoping to highlight the important ones. And here we can see how Srila Prabhupada is very submissive, very humble in a real sense. He understands his own position in reality, and he understands the position of the Guru, of Krishna, and he knows the process. He has the proper attitude also, and the right motivation. Right? So these four things we also need if we want to progress in our life. We need first of all a clear understanding what is my life about, Who am I? Why am I suffering even if I don't want to suffer? How can I get out of this? Like the fish out of water. No? How can I come back to my original position? What is my original position anyway? No? It starts with that. That is the special boon of the human form of life. Atato Brahma Jigyasya. Now, therefore means now, because we have attained that human form of life in which we have a faculty for understanding of, for higher topics. Animals don't have that. Now we should inquire into the absolute truth. Okay, so that was today's class. If you have some more comment or question, then we can say something. Thank you very much for your great patience and enthusiasm. Today was a little bit a stretch. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Gauradesh ki jai. Shri Gauradesh ki jai. Ananta Vaishnava ki jai. Hare Krishna.